Hey, good morning, everyone. As Bloom, what are you doing? Some Vogue stuff there, right?
Yeah, it's good. Paris is Burning. Check it out, folks. It's a great documentary. It's where voguing came from. You'll see.
Okay, all right. Good morning to everyone. You're waking up with the Audible here on our YouTube channel as we do part two of the Week 11 preview here. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom, and going with Cincinnati, Baltimore. Baltimore side's much more interesting, Bloom, but we're going to be monitoring the health status of John Ross this week. Marvin Lewis, what the hell is he saying that AJ Green could actually play? Like, I don't necessarily believe that, but that's what he said yesterday, kind of causing a tissy in the fantasy community. So, all right, I don't think Green's going to play. So that's Tyler Boyd, that's John Ross, that's Gio Bernard, and of course Joe Mixon and Dalton. So those are the names. What are the expectations? And do you believe this
Yeah.
whole AJ Green could play?
I don't. I'll defer to Dr. Gene tonight and on Sunday morning. I think this could easily be. Look, there's some tactical value to deploying AJ Green as a decoy, and we see the effect he has on defenses. If Jimmy Smith was running with him, that would certainly give John Ross a better shot of getting open. But at the same time, could it set back AJ Green's chance of contributing down the stretch? I'm going to guess based on everything we know from the severity of what they had to look into that we're not going to see him. And then that makes things a lot tougher. Compresses the field. And it's a Baltimore defense. And this is another one of those, the theme of week 11 cease, and probably for some of our fantasy teams too, last stand. This is a last stand kind of game. I suppose the number 6 seed in the AFC could be a 9-7 or 8-7-1 team backing in, but you got to win this game if you're Cincinnati or Baltimore and you are entertaining hopes of going to the playoffs. And this is Baltimore's defense rested at home. When we've seen the good Baltimore defense, which we haven't seen that often this year, that's what we've seen mainly. They've only done it against teams like Buffalo. But this is a very limited Cincinnati offense. So you're going to play Tyler Boyd as a wide receiver 3 flex. You're going to play Joe Mixon as a running back 2, but they have a low ceiling. Andy Dalton, not a preferred streamer. I'd probably play players like Eli Manning over Andy Dalton this week. Maybe even if AJ Green is out there, unless we see AJ Green puts in a full practice and we know we're going to get something like AJ Green. John Ross got a touchdown last week and a big play, and there was another big play where Andy Dalton threw it in the dirt. So could there be more opportunity? And Baltimore's not going to run away from Cincinnati the way New Orleans did. So it's possible that John Ross could have somewhat the heck flex appeal. But I think it's more likely that it'll be a game where Cincinnati's offense is flat and Baltimore's defense pick them up off the waiver wire. As I think that Baltimore's defense, we see some of these teams like Denver did against Kansas City, where the defense says, well, I guess we are going to have to do it. And that's the mentality I expect to have Baltimore going into this game, especially because not only do we not know who's going to play quarterback, it's could very much change, or we could get one of that great offensive strategy that has always worked, playing more than one quarterback.
I blame Tom Landry. That's actually one of the places where it used to be popular. Craig Morton and Roger Staubach used to split reps, split series for the Cowboys until they decided that Craig Morton wasn't the guy and they could go with Roger Staubach. Let's get out of the history lesson and go to the mystery lesson. Segue.
Well done.
I know.
You're freestyling now.
There you go. Because we're not sure who in the hell is going to start for Baltimore. Joe Flacco, John Harbaugh says Joe Flacco doesn't have to practice to play this weekend. A lot of people expecting Lamar Jackson to get the start, excited about that. Robert Griffin III is floating around there as a possibility, obviously with all that starting experience. So this really changes things, because you love guys in that smoke, stuff like that, right? You love John Brown. But we're not sure exactly who Lamar Jackson's favorite guys are. We're not sure who's even going to start. And that makes me not sure of any of the Ravens assets that I may have.
It's tough to project this offense, and I suppose that could be part of the tactical value that John Harbaugh is going for, because if we're having trouble projecting this offense for fantasy football, then Cincinnati might have trouble preparing for this offense. But on the flip side, Cincinnati fired their defensive coordinator and Marvin Lewis took over, and it's easy to forget that Marvin Lewis was once a bona fide defensive genius and somebody that could help pull this defense together and maybe have a little different energy around this team this week, at least around the defense. So now Lamar Jackson's still a must add, but he's more of a desperation quarterback. And the problem is because all this stuff's been floated, no matter what Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport report on Sunday morning, I don't feel comfortable that any of it is going to stay stable as the game goes on. So Lamar Jackson is still someone to consider playing this week if we hear announced that he's going to get the start, even though they might mix in some Robert Griffin III. But as more of a desperation start with a high ceiling than somebody really excited to get into our lineup. If we hear that Lamar Jackson starts, we're really excited to play Alex Collins, though. I think this opens up the lanes for Alex Collins. And when I think of Alex Collins' running style, I think of his instant acceleration. I think his ability to make moves at speed. And with defenses having to play 11 on 11 and focus on Lamar Jackson as a runner, I see that opening up lanes for Alex Collins that he can take advantage of. And then whether it's Joe Flacco or Lamar Jackson, Smokey Brown, I think is someone I want to try to get into my lineup this week because of how poor Cincinnati secondary has been. And because whether it's Joe Flacco in the deep ball or Lamar Jackson and his running threat, or even Robert Griffin III, say what you will about Robert Griffin III, throws a pretty deep ball. A beautiful deep ball comes down in that cylinder, has good feel for the deep ball and accuracy. And even if it's Robert Griffin III, you have that running threat that brings the safeties up and, challenge the rookie Jesse Bates. So I like John Brown's chance of hitting no matter who the quarterback is. But it's going to be interesting to see how Baltimore responds, because unthinkable that this stuff would be floating in the air. Is John Harbaugh's job on the line? Is he going to end up in Cleveland? Is he going to end up in Denver? Is he going to end up who knows where, but not in Baltimore? How does this team respond? Do they play for their coach the way that we saw Dallas play for their coach on Sunday night?
The chat room is reacting to me. And Dub Mentality asks, is Sig wearing pants? There you go. For our iTunes listeners, Sigmund just showed his pajamas.
That could be the thing of like no workplace accidents, like whether I'm wearing pants or not. It could be like yes or no.
Flip over the card. All right. So that's Oakland, Arizona. I'd rather talk about your pants or lack thereof than Oakland, Arizona. And I mean, we could go through like Martavis Bryant is hurt and Jordy Nelson's banged up. I don't
Number one receiver, Brandon LaFell.
I don't want to talk about the Raiders and Cardinals, but let's talk about them here.
Doug Martin. I mean, perhaps Doug Martin, who's been running well. This is an Arizona run defense that's been a poor run defense. Rodney Gunter is an upgrade from Robert Camdiche right now. So their run defense got better against Kansas City. The Arizona's defense, period, got better. I feel like there needs to be more attention given to how Arizona's defense played against Kansas City. All due respect to Denver, Cease. Arizona's defense had the best game against Kansas City this year. And they basically held them to 20 points. It was that Justin Houston interception. So they're getting pressure on the quarterback. They've got a lot of talented players in the back end of that defense too. So I really think that Oakland, this is a tough matchup as it is for Oakland. So I don't love Doug Martin. It's 6 teams on bye. It's a thin running back week. Jared Cook, I don't love him, but you might have to plug him in if you're desperate at tight end. Brandon LaFell's number one receiver. Doesn't that really sum up this offense, Cease? Somehow Brandon LaFell, who was on the street for how many weeks, is the number one receiver for an NFL team right now. So that tells you the state of this offense. And this is one of those draft position bowls, but I think we kind of know that Oakland's got that number one over. Good job, John Gruden. You accomplished that objective. Check that box. You got the number one overall pick. But the problem with that is now when we look at that Khalil Mack trade, what's that second first round pick that they got, Cease? Like 15 spots or 10 spots from the first to second round. That's it. So I think we're going to look back and see this season as disastrous as it feels in real time for the Raiders.
It was disastrous for the Cardinals when Mike McCoy was there, but thank you, Byron Leftwich, for making David Johnson a thing again. So Arizona, we talk a little Fitzgerald, a little David Johnson, and a little bit of nothing with this team.
Yeah, what was that, Louis Vega? The little bit of, it's like this is everybody, a little bit for David Johnson, a little bit for Larry Fitzgerald 2 weeks ago. I can't do it. I'm not even going to.
Number 5?
Yeah. A little bit of Larry by my side. Yeah, I'm not even going to go there. See, I shouldn't even try to do that stuff. I should just tell my brain, like, don't do it. But some of it's because Oakland's defense was so bad against San Francisco. Remember when Nick Mullins looked like Joe Montana? They didn't make Phillip Rivers look like Dan Fouts last week, but I do think that Josh Rosen's going to have some success throwing the ball to Larry Fitzgerald. We know that David Johnson is back. Ricky Seals-Jones becomes interesting. Oakland's been a good matchup for tight ends. So if you have to go to the waiver wire for a tight end, Seals-Jones had a decent week last week against Kansas City. And although we call this a draft position bowl, I see Arizona more like we saw San Francisco late last year, where, we're in position to have a top 5 pick. Who cares? Let's start winning. Let's start putting together the game plan. And I know we're talking about Matt Patricia. Could he be a one-and-done coach? I don't think we're saying that about Steve Wilks. And I think that they have this team pulling in the same direction. I think we talk about coaches and quarterbacks and teams taking on the personality of those two. Josh Rosen and his personality, we've seen him take some hits, but we saw it last week. They went into Kansas City and really played a team that most consider a Super Bowl favorite right now, straight up. And I think you're going to see the gap between where Arizona is and Oakland is in this game.
Well, let's talk about Denver and the LA Chargers, just typing about that now. And the Denver Broncos side of things, I really think Jeff Hireman's a thing, not because Hireman's good, not because he's had some sort of revelation. We have to realize that he had 9 catches 2 years ago, 9 catches last year, and 10 catches in the last game against the Texans. Why I think Bill Musgrave simplified this offense for Case Keenum. He had to, because Keenum wasn't capable of doing what he wanted him to do initially. They went like 2 months of that, and then they figured out, let's just play action, and let's do what Minnesota did. Royce Freeman should be back. Talked to Vance Joseph yesterday, said Freeman should be back. I don't think that changes Phillip Lindsay. He's going to get his 15 to 20 touches. He's going to be the lead back, and then Freeman is probably going to be eased in from a high ankle sprain. You'll still see Devontae Booker. Booker and Freeman will split that time. Emmanuel Sanders, Cortland Sutton are the assets to look to. Sanders is a borderline wide receiver 1. Sutton more as a flex play, in my opinion. But really, for me, it comes down to Case played his first clean game of the year last week. Didn't throw a pick. Does that continue on the road this week against the Chargers?
Well, let me ask you, Cecil Lammey, Denver Broncos insider, what I try to look for at this time of year are teams that are mailing it in, teams that are giving up. And we've seen Denver on the road, for instance, against the Jets, look like one of those teams. What to feel, because they know Vance Joseph is not going to be the coach next year. I mean, they know that Case Keenum, if he's the quarterback next year, will only be the quarterback to hand it off to somebody else eventually. Do you feel like this team, with Von Miller as the spiritual embodiment of this team, do you feel around coming out of the bye that they're ready to still play with pride, or do you feel like they're ready to get to January?
Von is DFW, and they have not given up on Vance Joseph from a player standpoint, on and off the record. They have not given up on their head coach. It's one of the reasons why they haven't fired him. Yeah. And Case Keenum was actually kind of arrogant yesterday, and actually kind of confident yesterday when I talked to him for the first time, because we've asked him, can you drop 40 on the Chiefs? And he was like, We've asked him, could you win 7 in a row? He's like, And then yesterday I asked him about, the Bill Musgrave thing, and I said, is the best yet to come with you? And he's like, yeah. So that's and I know that's simple, and maybe I'm reading too much Narrative Street. No. But that was the first time Case Keenum ever sounded confident this year. He believes in everyone else. He's got to believe in himself more. It seems like that may be happening.
And that's one to grow on. Look, I think if Denver gives, and it's a divisional matchup, we've seen them summon up pretty good efforts against Kansas City, then absolutely Phillip Lindsay should be in your lineup. Jeff Hireman, as you mentioned, it's almost like it's been for Austin Hooper in Atlanta. The tougher time the quarterback's having, the easier time he's having throwing, like the rookie quarterback theory, right? They're going to lean on the tight end. Well, it's working. So Hireman has a chance as a fill-in there. Now, Sanders, I mean, you have to play Emmanuel Sanders because he's playing so well and he has the connection with Case Keenum. But you've got Casey Hayward and Desmond King, and I don't even know if it really matters who's on who, because Cortland Sutton's going to get some lessons, I think, in NFL coverage and how you might not be able to just win on your physical advantages. So I might not be as excited about them. Joey Bosa is not going to be back for this game, but it was a beautiful thing to see him walking onto the practice field. And Melvin Ingram is playing some great football right now. They've got Derwin James. So I do think that it's going to be limited success for Denver. And then on the flip side, maybe Denver's defense can make it limited success for Phillip Rivers.
Phillip Rivers' side gets rid of the ball quickly. Doesn't test the defense deep this year because he doesn't have to. Yeah. Melvin Gordon's going to bring it. Austin Eckler's great flex play this week. Not even what the heck flex. I'm not going to write him down. He's a regular flex play. And we've seen backup running backs have great games against the Broncos. And then those trees at wide receiver, whether it's Keenan Allen or Mike Williams or Terrell Williams, all with varying degrees of value this week, Bloom. But it could be quite a bit of value for the Chargers at home.
It could be, but if Denver's ready for this one, then I think you're going to see a more conservative Chargers offense. You're still going to play Keenan Allen, but you might see some Chris Harris. You're still going to consider Tyrell Williams as a wide receiver 3 flex because of the upside, but he's only going to get 4 or 5 targets. And Mike Williams, we can wait, but it's going to take some sort of injury for him to be relevant. Even if he turns one of his 2 targets into a touchdown, it's tough to trust him at this point. It's all Melvin Gordon, as it should be. And I think leaning on Melvin Gordon allows them to both avoid the teeth of the Denver defense and attack the soft underbelly of the Denver defense. And as you said, Dawson Eckler, while he's been tailing off a little bit, maybe in a week where with 6 teams on bye and running back is looking thin, maybe this is a week of a resurgence for Austin Eckler. Maybe this is a week where if the Chargers run 55 plays, the running backs touch the ball on 35 or 40 of them. And Phillip Rivers only throws to wide receivers and tight ends maybe on 15 or 20 plays. The Chargers have been doing a good job. This is the first year, Cease, we can say the Chargers have been doing a good job winning games they're supposed to win. This is a game at home that they should win.
Yeah, well, hey, Chargers, you're getting it done, right? That's all that matters. Philadelphia and New Orleans, we're getting a crescendo to this show, Bloom. Because Philadelphia and New Orleans, this one's in the Superdome, and I know it wasn't the greatest with Golden Tate last week. It better be this week. And I know, he's got Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, and we can go through Alshon Jeffrey. We'll go through all the names. And I know the running back position is kind of up in the air. We'll see if they really show that real interest in C.J. Anderson or anybody else to help out the running back group. But this is a week where if you're Philadelphia, you have to know going in 40 points might not be enough. No. So if they have that mindset, if they're able to execute that way, Bloom, who are those Eagles assets that you want in your lineup?
Carson Wentz. I mean, anytime you have this kind of game script, you want the quarterback in. And Carson Wentz, even in a losing effort, this could be, for a long time, Cease, there was not a great correlation between throwing for 300 yards when that was a big mark and winning. That was often bad. Like, this is that kind of game where Carson Wentz could throw for 400 yards and still lose this one because they're not going to lean much on the running game. And as you said, they have Golden Tate. Obviously, there's Zach Ertz. And I don't know beyond that because Alshon Jeffrey is probably going to see a lot of Marshawn Lattimore in this one. As you said, it's Golden Tate, and Golden Tate might get one of the easier matchups in the Saints secondary. However, he hasn't been fully integrated into the offense yet, it appears. So Nelson Aguilar may be getting some big plays or getting some volume. He might be one to look at. I guess he might be matching up against Eli Apple in this one. But what's interesting to me here, not so much from the fantasy standpoint, because I think you'll see Wentz to Ertz. I mean, just look at how it went against Dallas, and New Orleans defense is better than Dallas, and you're playing in the Super Bowl. So I think you can use that as a template, but maybe up the production because there's going to be a lot more desperation to come back because of how well the Saints offense is playing. But a Super Bowl team now in week 11 is in a kind of win or go home game, and they're only playing the best team in the NFL on the roads right now. So good luck, Eagles fans. It's so funny because the Eagles, they get finally the Super Bowl championship, and now it's back to the woe is us, as this is not the kind of setting an opponent you want in a must-win game.
Well, our own Jason Wood was probably there last week booing them.
Yeah.
It's Philly fan, right? I'd be upset if they weren't booing them. And
right.
Well, just rest on your laurels. Not in this league whatsoever. New Orleans doesn't do that. I'm finding ways, and I've got Traquan Smith in almost every league, Bloom. We talked a lot about him this preseason, and I'm throwing him in as what the heck flex this week. And, of course, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Drew Brees, you're starting all those guys. Any value here for others like Biggie Ben Watson? And is it going to be, a 40-plus point output for the Saints?
It would be shocking if it's not. Really, I mean, maybe shocking is putting it a little strong, but I forget the stat that went around. But this Saints team, I want to say, is scoring on something in the high 60s, around 70% of their drives. And even the offenses that we consider to be the great offenses, like the 2007 Patriots, were only around 50%. It's unreal what the Saints are doing right now. And as you said, from a fantasy standpoint, it's pretty straightforward. And even though the Eagles have a good run defense on paper, did you see what Ezekiel Elliott did to them last week? And Mark Ingram has that no-nonsense downhill style that I'm not afraid to start Mark Ingram as a running back too, especially in the running back landscape this week. And they're getting him more involved in the passing game. What was nice if you have Mark Ingram, as you saw last week in the first half, a real emphasis on getting him involved and him looking as good as he did last year when he was running back one down the stretch. Yes, this offense absolutely can support 2 running back ones. As you said, with Traquan Smith, you're liking him this week because who's playing corner for Philly at this point? It's bad. It's really bad. And even though this team has been stocking up, getting Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas and these guys, there's problems here. But poor Malcolm Jenkins going back to the place that the team that drafted him, like he's gonna have to make some plays. Pull that. I mean, this is a game where the Eagles are gonna have to do what the Saints did in the year they won the Super Bowl and basically sell out and do high risk, high reward. Try to get some pressure, blitzing, doing something, because if they try to sit back, they have no answer for what the Saints can do. So good luck, Eagles.
Good luck to you as well, kind sir. Minnesota and Chicago is up next. Stephon Diggs, and this was their plan, right? Where Diggs is like, I'm going to be back this Sunday night. He's going to be back this Sunday night, fully participating in practice on Wednesday. If you're watching us, hi, YouTube. And if you're listening to us, we are recording on Thursday morning. It was also on Wednesday that Adam Thielen now kind of has some injuries stacking up. Bloom, still not concerned, still starting Thielen, of course, but it's just something to monitor, keep an eye on. You're monitoring Dalvin Cook. Can he do a little bit more this time around? Things look good, working back in. Is there a larger piece of the pie? And how does Kirk Cousins respond against this Bears defense? And the Vikings, of course, be on the road.
Yeah, that's the question I have is Kirk Cousins, who's been playing outstanding football. And we talked a lot in August about all the injuries and worries about the Minnesota offensive line. And to be honest, it has bared out that they bore out that they actually are bad offensive line. And Kirk Cousins is under pressure a lot, as much as about any quarterback in the league. And yet he's making it happen. Now, this is a little different facing this Bears defense. You're still going to play Thielen. You're still going to play Bryce Callahan, by the way, or Brian Callahan, doing some great work as a slot corner for the Bears. Prince Amukamara is playing well. Of course, they've got Kyle Fuller. So it's going to be interesting to see how these matchups play out, knowing that you can play aggressive coverage against these wide receivers, knowing that Khalil Mack and Leonard Floyd and Akeem Hicks are going to get home in the pass rush against this offensive line. Dalvin Cook looks like a good play simply because they're going to get him heavily involved as a receiver out of the backfield. And now that his hamstring, we saw it on the 70-yard run before the bye, his hamstring is sound. This is a game where if there's rational coaching, they may only run the ball 10 or 15 or 20 times against the Chicago front, but you have a running game with lots of short passing to Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook should catch 6, 7, 8, 9 balls in this game, maybe have as many receptions as carries if they're really going to do things to reduce the pressure on Kirk Cousins and get one of their best players really central in the game plan for the first time since week 1. But what's really great about this one, fascinating, because we're going to talk about the next game, and of course how there's the NFC playoff picture with the Rams, the Saints, unless the Panthers botch it, the Panthers are in there, some team from the NFC East. Minnesota and Chicago both situated themselves, and we'll know by the time this game is played how the Packers did in Seattle. But not only is this a game for an inside track for the NFC North, but these teams are going to play again in Week 17. And both of these teams, I think we would say right now, the Rams, Vikings went to the Rams' house, and we're going to see the Bears play the Rams. That's going to be fun. But the Vikings went to the Rams' house and were just outclassed by them. Kirk Cousins did everything he could. The receivers did everything good to keep up with the Rams, and they couldn't. So the team that wins this game is the team I think that can stake a claim that, no, it's another team that deserves to be in the Super Bowl picture. It's us, even the Bears with Mitchell Trubisky. And I think as much as we're wondering about Kirk Cousins against this Bears defense, the even more interesting test is Mitchell Trubisky against this Vikings defense.
To that, I would say double true, and that leads us into the Trubisky side of things and Tariq Cohen, and of course, really like what we're seeing, the connection there with Anthony Miller. But how will Trubisky at home? Do they ride a surge of momentum, or do they crash down a little bit on Sunday?
Yeah, we've seen, so this offense when they're facing an easy to solve defense, make it look easy like they did last week against the Lions without Darius Slay. Go back to the game against the Bucks. Everything works. Everything Matt Nagy dials up works. He's a genius. All the personnel they have fit perfectly in the plays they call. Mitchell Trubisky executes very well. The Vikings defense isn't going to make it easy. They're rested. Everson Griffin, great to see that he's past some of the turbulence that he had in his personal life. They've got a Danielle Hunter, who's still just getting better and better. Linval Joseph, Sheldon Richardson. Listen, remember, Sheldon Richardson is a Minnesota Viking in this front. They've got Harrison Smith. They've got Eric Kendricks. Xavier Rhodes should be more well rested. So look, you're still going to play Allen Robinson. It's Allen Robinson of old, what we saw last week. So I'm willing to get him in my lineup as a wide receiver 3 or flex or something, even in that matchup. Anthony Miller is really surging right now. And even though he's playing with a harness for the second year in a row because of a shoulder injury, which shows you what he's made of, he's going to have the better matchup. And you see the chemistry between him and Mitchell Trubisky. It seems like it could be an Anthony Miller evening. Taylor Gabriel, I just don't know if there's going to be as much time to throw deep. We may hear from Taylor Gabriel again later this year, like in the Rams matchup, but maybe not in this one. It's more of a Tariq Howard than a Tariq Cohen than Jordan Howard game. And this one, you would hope that it really, I mean, this hurts as someone who has Jordan Howard on a few teams, but the right mode for the Bears offense is for Howard to only maybe be on the field for 10 or 15 snaps in this game and Cohen to really be a lead back. Of course, there's also Trey Burton in this one, but we could also find out in this game that, hey, Mitchell Trubisky, a la Blake Bortles, who's been compared to a few times, it's fine when the going is easy. He can execute, but when the going gets tough, we see interceptions, we see bad decisions, and we see that this is a team that may make the playoffs but not go very far because of their quarterback. I can't wait to see what happens.
I can't wait for Monday Night Football. In the NFL, you did it right. No Estadio Azteca and, 90,000 people that bought tickets down there in El Capital. But, hey, you got to do player safety. You got to go with that, of course. Field conditions. I think the NFL should be out in front of this. As they do their international series, I think this is a big learning lesson for them. But they make the right call, the right move, moving this game to Los Angeles. But let's get it on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the game. This is popcorn. This is everything. This is football. This better not disappoint. I don't think it will. But KC versus the Rams. We're watching the practice status of Sammy Watkins, but Bloom. Everyone knows the names. I'm starting everybody. Spencer Ware. I'm starting everybody. They got Chiefs logo on the side of their helmet. They're probably in my starting lineup this week.
Yes, this is like the we know WrestleMania is going to be coming up in February, but this is like Andre the Giant against Hulk Hogan. The title belt is not on the line, but we still get to watch him fight, and it's going to be fun. Sammy Watkins should be fine. We'll watch his practice reports to make sure that he's getting into full practice. We don't have to worry about him. You're going to play everybody in this one. Well, from a matchup standpoint, Dante Fowler is your key player here. The Chiefs have been frustrated by Von Miller, by Chandler Jones, by teams with a good edge rush. And you do see that wonderful, casual, nonchalant way that Patrick Mahomes has of keeping himself composed on the field. Maybe a bit of a weakness when you have these guys that can bear down quickly. And of course, you have Aaron Donald and you have Ndamukong Suh. So, and the Chiefs' offensive line has had a few injuries. They lost, I believe they lost Dr. Duvernay Tardif. And Mitch Morse has been banged up. And so maybe while the edge rush, Eric Fisher had a rough afternoon last week. Aaron Donald can line up outside too. Watch Aaron Donald edge rush. And by the way, did you know Aaron Donald? He should be carrying the ball sometimes too. Really, I was like, wow. How do you contend with that? So let's get on that, Sean McVay. Let's run some like wishbone with Aaron Donald as the quarterback. But Aaron Donald's going to be coming. So this could be a game where Wade Phillips and what they dial up with this pass rush could make things frustrating for Patrick Mahomes. And this could be the game sees for all the anticipation and excitement that we have about some sort of 45-42 shootout. The Rams could make this difficult. And I almost wonder if Andy Reid will try to put together longer drives instead of trying to do the high risk, high reward offense, because you're leaving Patrick Mahomes back there exposed to Ndamukong Suh, to Aaron Donald, to Michael Brockers, to Dante Fowler. I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, I can't wait to just watch some great football, a great offensive output. On the flip side, again, similar thing. Now, Josh Reynolds,
Right.
if you're putting together the DFS lineup, and challenge accepted, Bloom. We had our man on Twitter reach out and say, like, I got McCaffrey and Elliott and Gurley all in one lineup, and he did that with Josh Reynolds in there as well. And Reynolds without Cooper Kupp is going to be their third asset. I'm throwing him as a what the heck flex this week, so I'll jot that down for the next segment. But, yeah, start your Rams, start Gurley, and start company, and just watch.
Yeah. It's going to be, we'll watch to see, is it more Robert Woods in the slot? Is it more Josh Reynolds outside? Again, I think Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett are interesting names at tight end. If you're looking for a 1 week fill-in, maybe more involved, they're certainly very capable. I think both Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee could be players. I don't know where they would end up on their second contract, but there's a lot more there than what the Rams are getting out of them, because the Rams are playing that 3 wide set so often. Maybe that changes a little bit coming into this one. The Chiefs got Justin Houston back. He should be even more ready after the quarterback. We know what Dee Ford's been doing. So they have some good interior pass rushers also there, and Chris Jones and Allen Bailey. And this is one where it's funny, if your league doesn't penalize for points and yards allowed, and when you start defenses, all you really care about are sacks, turnovers, potential defensive touchdowns, this is a good game, I think, to play either one of these defenses, because I think it could be more opened up. You could see a lot of haymakers thrown both by the defenses and the offenses. We could see this is a kind of game that, at least based on what's in our mind's eye, you could see one team jump ahead by 14 or 17, and then by the third quarter, early fourth quarter, the other team's ahead by 17 or 14. And it still comes down to the last possession. And it could be because of some defensive touchdowns, some great individual defensive plays. Remember, you still have Marcus Peters in this one to be a ball hawk, and he has a way of making big plays in big moments. This is just going to be a really fun game, and I think that there's going to be lots of acts and stages and overtures, and I hope that it lives up to the billing, because I can't remember, season really, in the 12 years we've been doing this show, I cannot remember a game where everything came together. We talked about the Bears-Dolphins game in '85 when those teams faced earlier this year. And that's what it reminds me of, the most anticipated regular season game that I can remember.
Simply wonderful and fantastic. Just like our next segment and final segment here in part 2 of the Week 11 preview here on the Audible. It's our ever-popular What the Heck Flex. Bloom, you look over the lineup, you just need some punch. So, in Week 11, who are those players? For me, I'm looking at a bevy here. A couple of tight ends, Michael Roberts, Jonnu Smith, Sterling Shepard, probably more than a what the heck flex, but anyway, I'll throw him in there. Vance McDonald, same thing. Traquan Smith, Josh Reynolds. That's the list for me, Blue. Yeah. Who's on your list for what the heck flex?
Well, running back is thin, so we're really talking more about what the heck running backs, because chances are you should be flexing a wide receiver. But some running backs that could sneak in as PPR plays, other than obvious Jalen Richard, Theo Riddick, especially if Marvin Jones is banged up or limited. TJ Yeldon, the more conservative Blake Bortles gets, the better it is for TJ Yeldon. I mentioned Doug Martin having somewhat of an opportunity, although don't be surprised if Arizona's run defense is better than it looks like on paper. Nyheim Hines is interesting, if we're getting somewhat desperate here, but Hines can play. And if Marlon Mack gets a little banged up in this one, sometimes if you have to dig deep, you're looking for the possibility that a player could get more work as the game goes on because of their counterpart getting injured. And I would say again, I'm excited what Alex Collins can do with Lamar Jackson or Robert Griffin III, and I would try to get him in my lineup, even though he's been disappointing. On the wide receiver side, you mentioned Josh Reynolds. Traquan Smith's a good one, because against this Philly secondary, it only takes one play for Traquan Smith to hit for you. Likewise, DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel against that Detroit secondary. Tyler Lockett against the Green Bay secondary. Anthony Miller has some momentum right now. So we're looking at in the what the heck flex wide receiver range on those players that can score and make your week on one play.
Oh, yeah. That is a wrap for part 2 of the Week 11 preview here on the Audible. And, hey, YouTube thing, I guess people like watching us in the morning, Bloom.
I'm going to have to keep changing my clothes every day now.
All right. This is how tired I was yesterday. True story. Because I wanted to wear this sweater yesterday, and I grabbed a sweater that I wore Monday and wore it twice in 1 week because I was so tired I didn't even notice. Anyway, Fashion, that's a 2,789 podcast. Fashion Sense with Sig and Cecil. So there you go. That's a wrap, everyone. Have a great day. Have a blessed week. And, of course, watch us tonight on the Audible Live. We got a pretty good Thursday night game there as well. So for the great Sigmund Bloom, I'm Cecil Lammey saying stay tuned, stay frosty.